Well, good morning, and thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here. I feel like the speaker this morning who said, I'm used to nonprofits and government conferences, and oh my God, this is like Oz. This is amazing. So thank you so much for having me. Inbound, HubSpot, Laura Fitton. Thank you for caring about an issue that I've dedicated my life to. And I'm so glad to see so many people who are ready to help me work myself out of a job. Because let me tell you what happens when I'm in a social setting, right? It's a pretty innocuous question. So, Greta, what do you do? And I get to say, well, I'm a policy attorney, and I help write laws, policies, and procedures to end domestic violence, sexual assault, and stalking. And I generally get 1 out of 3 responses. The first response is, thank you so much for what you do. You're an angel. Let me tell you what happened to me. Let me tell you what happened to my cousin, my sister, my grandmother, my aunt, my neighbor, my friend. And I listen to these gut-wrenching, heart-wrenching stories. And I say, thank you for sharing that with me. And I'm left devastated every time because I've never heard the same story twice. And I'm texting my friends, I just heard this story. What are we doing about this? And they're like, can we do the revolution at 9, Greta? It's 2 a.m. Like, if you must. The second response I generally get, and it's usually when I'm buckled in an airplane or I'm in a super shuttle and I can't get out. The second response is, men are abused just as much as women. And I take a deep breath and I say, well, let's talk about that. Because what the data says, the statistics say, is that more women are abused and actually that more men are abusers. And that, yes, women use violence, but women use violence in very different ways. Usually, women use violence being resistive or retaliating for violence that's used against them. And women generally don't use power and control in the context of when they're using violence, because women don't have power and control and authority usually in society, and therefore not in relationships. And usually, women will use a weapon because they have to leverage the strength differential when they're in a violent situation. And we'll go back and forth, and if I still haven't sold them, I say, well, women are dying. And it used to get really, really exhausting. And so when people started asking me, what did I do? I'd say, I work in sanitation. There are no follow-up questions. And then a mentor of mine who I care for very deeply said, Greta, you have to stop saying that, because every conversation you have is an opportunity for healing and for education. And I said, okay, and I stopped. But then there's this third response that makes me a little crazy. And it's usually at a cocktail party or some other, social environment. And they say, oh my God, that is so depressing. Why on earth would you ever want to do that? And that's when I get crazy. Because that's when I have to start going into these. That 3 women every day are killed in the United States. That's not slipping on water. That's not falling off a bike. That's 3 women every single day who are killed by someone who says, I love you. 1 in 4 women will experience domestic violence in their lifetime. If we took the time to count off 1, 2, 3, 4 in this room, 25% of the women that are sitting right here in this room have either experienced or will experience domestic violence. 10 million children are exposed to domestic violence every year. And actually, one of my mentors, Lundy Bancroft, said in a speech recently, we got to actually stop saying children exposed to domestic violence, because actually what they're being exposed to are abusers. So 10 million children are exposed to abusers every year. 8 million paid workdays are lost by women due to domestic violence. And 98% involve financial abuse. Homicide is the leading cause of death in pregnancy. Not preeclampsia, not a C-section that went wrong, but at the hands of somebody who said, I love you. And I get so frustrated, right? And then I'm sitting here, and now I'm mad, right? Because if I still haven't sold them, you know what I say? I have great job security. And I walk away. Let them chew on that for a little while. And I can't imagine the frustration that Vice President Biden had back in the 90s when he first started trying to pass the legislation, the Violence Against Women Act. Advocates from all over the country came to him and said, Senator Biden, at the time, women are dying, women are being abused, they are being financially, spiritually, and emotionally decimated in their homes. We have to do something. And at the time, Senator Biden, now Vice President Biden, said, you're absolutely right, we have to do something. And he went to Congress, women are dying, we need to do something about it. He thought that was a slam dunk. It took him 4 years to pass the Violence Against Women Act. Because guess what? There was a little bit of pushback. And the pushback was, well, that's kind of a private family matter. That's excessive social spending. It's going to clog up the courts. But the advocates and Vice President Biden kept pushing, and so the Violence Against Women Act has been reauthorized many, many times. And so what I think is so important that we recognize, especially today, because we're about to celebrate the 21st anniversary of the Violence Against Women Act, and we're also remembering a year ago the now infamous Ray Rice TMZ video. And what we have found is that an amazing thing happened. That this age-old question of why did she stay? Why didn't she just leave? Has been answered. We know that it's power and control. But what's so amazing about you guys in social media is that on that day last year, there were 70,000 responses. Big Mountain Data came out with this graph saying that there were 70,000 responses in one day. And they also came out with an infographic yesterday that says that there were 85,000 original hashtags about why I stayed. There were 185,000 responses across all social media platforms about why women stayed in these relationships. 185,000 reasons why they couldn't leave, and 65,000 reasons of why they left. See the point I'm trying to make? 185 why I stayed, 65 why I left. There's this great quote by Rebecca Burns that says, women stay when the fear of leaving is greater than the fear of staying. Women will leave when the fear of staying is greater than the fear of leaving. And so we have 185 ways that we can help women leave, because we know that when they leave, lethality is higher. If there is a gun in the home, exponentially increases the possibility of a fatality. We know that getting jobs is difficult. She might lose custody of her children, and those are all reasons why they stay. And we need to do just a little bit better. And so, while I'm here today, what I'm asking you to do, because I'm going to ask you to do some stuff, I'm going to need your help. I'm going to need you to help dismantle the patriarchal system that we have in this country that reduces women in this country to second-class citizens in a first-world country, that commodifies the bodies of women and profits from it and makes us feel as though we have no voice and that we have nowhere to go. And if you think I'm lying, explain the pay gap. If you think I'm lying, explain to me why the courts have decided I have no expectation of privacy under my skirt if I'm in a public place. And since we're in Massachusetts, big ups to Massachusetts, who, when a woman was photographed under her skirt on a bus, said that she has an expectation of privacy. And shame on the states who are telling me now that I do not. In Utah, a 13-year-old girl was photographed in Target underneath her skirt, and the Utah court said she had no expectation of privacy underneath her skirt because she was wearing panties. This is not how we treat women. This is not how we should be treating each other. So I'm going to ask you to do 3 things. The first is, if you are fortunate enough, if you are lucky enough, use your spheres of influence. If a woman trusts you, believe her. That will make her safe. If you hear of someone abusing their partner, tell them to stop. Don't stalk her, man. You don't have to follow her. Let's go over here. Let's go play basketball. And the third thing is use your influence. Use your influence to say women are important, women matter. And use your influence to make a change. Let's shift this country into a paradigm we have not seen before, where instead of power and control, we see respect and equity. And I feel hope. I'm so hopeful. Because 1, I'm here. 2, you're here. And 3rd, I recently went on another trip. I was going to South Texas Friday night. Guy sitting next to me, he says, "What are you going to South Texas on a Friday night alone for?" I say, "Well, work." He says, "Well, what do you do?" "Wait, let me guess." I said, "Okay." So he says, "You're in manufacturing." No. So he keeps guessing. Finally, I was afraid he's going to say clown circus clown. So I was like, "No." And I tell him, and he says, "My wife has her own bank account." And I said, "That's great." And I pat him on the back, and he told me how he had to defend that choice to his family because he's supposed to be head of household. And so I'm so hopeful. I'm so grateful. And I hope I get more responses like that, because then I know that change is here. But then who knows? Maybe I'll be out of a job. Maybe I'll go into manufacturing. Thank you.